to you, I am of a point that we would need a charging infrastructure hand in hand. With that, we have a lot of.
Yeah.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that it is not one of the solution that's going to be a win. Where we see that fast charging is a very obvious solution for developed market, and we see that swapping solution is a very good solution for a good market fit and commercial segment in India for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. But still, I believe that our vehicle mix is a very interesting one. Our society is also very interesting one from the mix point of view, and that's where I see that the infrastructure also has to be a mixed one. We cannot completely rely on swapping. We can't completely rely on the charging. It has to be a mixed one. And depending upon our vehicle mix and the type of the transportation that we have on the different segments here in the country, swapping, smart charging, slow charging, fast charging, everyone would have its own space and needs to be there as the infrastructure.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. PRABHJOT, because that
gives
a lot of insight.
If you don't mind, yes, can I add one point to what
yes,
PRABHJOT was saying on swapping? Thank you so much, PRABHJOT. I mean, clearly shows how deeply you are entrenched into the space. One other thing for swapping that one needs to keep in mind is that it's just wrong to treat it as an alternative to charging. Swapping has so many other potential beyond just a charging alternative. It's not a bridge to come in while the society moves to the market moves to high fast charging solutions. Just having this network of swapping stations. Most swapping stations in the country currently have at least 1.5 batteries per vehicle, which means 50% of the battery capacity in swapping stations are underutilized. Just imagine if we can integrate this network of swapping stations into the grid as virtual storage, or even possibilities of like trading it with the grid or peer-to-peer networks. Marginal cost of like virtual storage is literally like zero or like, very negligible, which means
our grid concept would basically monetize it on a different level and use the latent capacity.
Exactly. Like, I mean, there's so much more to battery swapping than what we are seeing. And this is also why today morning there was a Niti Aayog session where consultation on battery swapping. Like I was like, government intervention at this point might actually just kill all the innovation happening. It is not, the technology has not matured enough to do standardization, bring in interoperability, etc. Give it some time, let the entrepreneurs, the innovators compete with each other. We will get to a point. And this is a very nascent technology across the world. So there is a chance that India, and from the companies I have seen as an investor, the largest number of innovations in battery swapping is happening here.
But Vishnu, I have a question there itself. Recently, Reliance has invested heavily into a sodium-ion battery company in Europe to basically, so basically to help them out in making it more better R&D capabilities and production capabilities. That's the basic reason why they invested into it. So how would that become wouldn't that become a challenge because of interoperability? Because if there is a lithium-ion battery, it cannot be swapped with a sodium-ion battery. And if sodium-ion batteries are more efficient, better, cost-effective, whatever, all the big words, then why would anyone go for a lithium-ion battery?
Ritin, sir, let's not mix interoperability with an alternative chemistry. Interoperability, even with lithium-ion, there are like so many different chemistries in lithium-ion already working. And even if it's the same technology, the same chemistry that we are using, you can't we have not reached the point where, like say SMETO can use interoperability with Sun Mobilities. I mean, we will get there eventually. Somewhere the market will drive us in the right direction. But even with the same chemistry, interoperability is not there. But your point around sodium is interesting. Sodium ion, I can talk a little bit more about the sodium ones.
Would love to, because see, it's exciting to listen about. We have grown up listening to lead batteries, lithium ion batteries and these only. Sodium ion is a new word for me personally.
It's sorry to break your consumption. Sodium ion is not a new technology. A lot of research has gone into it in the 1970s, but then the fancier, newer version of lithium ion came in, and people just started putting more energy into that. And rightfully so, because of the investment that has gone into that lithium ion, we actually achieved a lot of the cost improvement has happened, and cost reduction has happened on a phenomenal scale. See, lithium ion, the way I look at lithium ion is, sodium ion batteries is from where, why do we need an alternative to lithium? What are the shortcomings of lithium ion that is forcing us to look for a sodium ion or any different kind of batteries? From a mobility perspective, 40% of an electric vehicle's cost usually lies with the battery cost. And that means that lithium ion batteries which is what is currently used, and a very important part of the value chain for any electric vehicle. Even from a non-mobility part, we don't have a lot of alternatives which allows for long-term storage, etc., which works with utilities and so on. From a cost perspective, the cost has dramatically come down in the last decade,
that's
2020, 2020 for lithium ion. But there are some bottlenecks. Lithium is a very rare metal, and to build lithium ion batteries, we also need something called as rare earth metals, for your cathode and anode, you need graphene or nickel, cobalt, etc. The interesting thing to note over here is this also has a global political dimension to it. A lot of the lithium reserves, rare earth reserves are lithium reserves are basically in two countries, China and Chile. Rare earths mostly in China. Now you know where I'm going with this, right? When
I don't want you to go there. So
no, but it is an important aspect of this whole equation. Why we need an alternative like sodium. So so China is controlling a big part of the supply chain, and that is creating, I'm sure folks like Mani and PRABHJOT will have been getting the cells in their supply chain, because even during COVID times they have really tightened the supply chain. So what is the alternative, right? Can we find an alternative chemistry or a metal which is more ubiquitously available, more universally equally distributed? And that is probably where sodium ions prominence come in. Sodium is.
So Mani sir, over to you now. As Vishnu already mentioned, it's got to be a crucial role from your end.
I'm so sorry, I was a little bit disconnected. I'm so sorry about it because of connectivity. So it's an interesting point that Vishnu has really touched. There is a lot of alternative to the existing lithium ion. So why should we look at alternate? I mean, he has explained. I don't want to get into the details. But what are other alternatives? Apart from sodium, you also have people talked about fuel cells. There are some researches going on. That's the reason I come from Bosch. The Bosch, very long time back, they stopped all the research in lithium ion batteries. So we are the early one to start, in the year 2007, and we have closed the whole research in lithium ion by 2012. That means most of the investment went into solid state chemistries. That is another dimension why we talk about solid state chemistry. Because in lithium ion, you are exposed to explosion and thermal behaviors are unpredictable, and there's a lot of energy density, of course, beyond which you can't improve. And that's the reason that the solid state chemistries, and sodium ion is one of the chemistries or the technologies which comes inbuilt, the solid state. So that's the reason why the sodium is really becoming very popular in terms of not only cost density, it also kind of gives you an ultimate level of safety. So that is very important when it comes to battery, right? So that's the reason why this sodium ion, but of course there are alternate chemistry. People are talking about supercapacitor now. So thanks to this Tesla, the Arcade Maxwell, and after that this has become big subject and talk by itself. Ultra capacitors, which is also eventually would become, if it becomes mainstream, that would be a big alternate and reduces a lot of dependency, with any natural resources, right? And we should eventually move more towards magnet-free motors. I would say people Vishnu would like it. Magnet-free motors and some technology independent energy storage, which is like a supercapacitor or hydrogen fuel cells. That would be the real long-term future where we can create a global level breakthrough and without depending on any particular nation or country or technology. So that is what I would like to really focus. I heard that Reliance not only focusing on sodium ion, because you talked about Reliance, but they are also now getting into fuel cell technology. They have registered a company called Reliance, fuel cell EV. There is a company, so they are focusing on that as well. In the long term, for the short distance commute, probably we can look at all the sodium ion or lithium ion or aluminum ion, this kind of chemical based technologies, because that have energy density limitation. For the long distance, probably long distance commute, we should focus on hydrogen fuel cells, and that is what the whole world is moving actually.
So, Mani sir, talking about batteries, you have given so much of insight about the alternatives. I'm damn sure the entrepreneurs who are listening to us would be, excited to explore the opportunities that are lying there in battery manufacturing, apart from lithium ion and considering sodium ion and other alternatives for sure. Talking about batteries, and we are talking about batteries in two-wheeler, three-wheeler. Now, I really want to ask Akshay, as you jumped onto electric tractors, what were the challenges were faced by you? Because when we consider battery issues in two-wheeler, three-wheelers and four-wheelers, I am sure that there had been a great challenges, came across your way while you were getting into electric tractors. So would love to hear from you.
Sure. HEENA, if we are to look at the ecosystem of an electric vehicle, it's going to have a tremendous effect at a lot of levels. If we were to assume the whole ecosystem like a set of Russian dolls, at the core of it would be the customer. And we have discussed a lot about it, that how the customer is getting impacted and the challenges which customer is looking at, being it range anxiety, be it the cost of battery, be it the total cost of ownership of the vehicle, or the servicing, or even the infrastructure around it, right? So that is one aspect of things which we are dealing with right now. The second doll, so to say, would be the auto industry, where we come into picture. There are certain challenges which we are also facing while we are developing it. And the biggest one right now at the top of my hat is the technology. We are good at adopting technology, but what we have done so far with respect to two-wheelers, battery technology, we have not been able to replicate it further than that. So we have not been able to move to a heavier battery pack. And unfortunately, so far, we are largely dependent on international technology for the basic units of cell as well. I'll give you a practical example. I'm currently working with 6 battery pack manufacturers. 5 out of them are Indian make and 1 is international. To date, I can't pinpoint and say that this is the one I would like to go ahead with. All 6 of them are having some issues or the other, right? So they are improving the technology. And that's how technology is, it evolves. But so far, we are not there. And this is one area where definitely a lot of work has to be done. Second area which we find is we do not have a stable supplier base for electric vehicles right now. So there are new startups which have come up, but they are yet to prove their reliability or their durability in the market. We are doing hand holding with a lot of them, but again, so there is not a ready-made infrastructure in terms of suppliers which is there. Third challenge which we foresee is, apart from battery, there are many other materials which will go into an EV. And over time, as the penetration increases, the supply chain and cost of these commodities are going to change drastically. So what you would have seen is in last 12 months or a year, we have seen one major concern on the semiconductor issues. And if more capacities are not there, once EVs come into picture, larger number of semiconductors are going to be used. They are going to become a bottleneck, and it will eventually have an impact on the pricing. You would have also observed in last 12 months, the price of copper has gone through the roof, almost jumped 70%. As the consumption goes up, this price would also continue to go up. So there will have to be a balancing act which needs to be done. We can't only look at the technology cost, but all the material costs also has to be considered. Third factor, which I foresee from an manufacturer perspective, is this concept of battery. Be it charging or be it a swappable solution, either ways, our brand gets linked to this mammoth cost, that is 40% of the vehicle cost. If we go for swapping, now when we are designing our vehicles, we are over designing our vehicles, right? So we know that our tractors are going to be abused in the market and they are not used as per the prescribed norms. We are not very sure that batteries are able to take those kind of life cycles or not. And tomorrow, if we are given a warranty of, let's say, 2 years on our vehicle, as well as battery, and there is some fault in the battery, the customer would put that blame on our brand. So in a way, our brand gets linked to the quality of the battery alone. So even if it is a swappable solution, unless they standardize the design and the customer has 10 options to choose one or other, like they have right now with diesel, either they can go to IOC or they can go to HP or Reliance. Until the time that happens, OEMs will have to take a lot of that burden. These are the major challenges which I see from a industry point of view. At the backward side of our supply chain, there might be many more at the front end also. So our dealers' business model would change drastically. Currently, there is one cost of the vehicle which goes, plus there is a revenue model attached with the servicing and the spare part of a vehicle or a tractor. Now, in an EV, the number of parts would come down drastically, and they would not be repaired so much as replaced. So the dealer revenue model would change, and that is yet to be attuned, at least in tractor industry. Two-wheeler would be the one which will, but tractor is yet to go. So those are the broad challenges. Broad challenges which
So while talking about the challenges that you have specified, there is one more challenge that we eye on. That is the rural infrastructure. There's a lot of challenge around the electricity. And then we are talking about charging infrastructure. How are we going to build that? I know this is not an answer that can be given in we just have started transition. So I am not expecting it to get settled down in a coming 6 months or 1 year time, but there has to be a certain time limit wherein we can at least eye on that, a rural transition could be seen in terms of charging infrastructure.
I completely agree. So infrastructure building up usually takes time. Especially of a level where what we are looking at right now. There might be a transition phase where hybrid vehicles might fly to overcome this challenge till the time infrastructure completely comes into picture. But yes, this is going to remain a challenge. There are certain government policies which are coming in which would help set up local level power plants with the bio-CNG coming into picture, but that is still on paper. We are yet to see that and its effect coming into our scenario.
That's totally understandable because infrastructures cannot be built in a one night time, And I would ask this a similar kind of a question from Ankit as well, because Ankit, there's a lack of knowledge, and how do you see certain opportunities in terms of, startups or entrepreneurs creating that kind of a charging infrastructure in the rural areas? And how do you think that people could be educated in that particular area? Because that's going to be a challenge for everybody.
Heena, in the entire construct of roti, kapda, makan, the three necessities of mankind and womankind, the entire electrification of villages today, as per government data, while I don't know how much it's true, but if what they claim is to be true, 96% electrification exists in the rural areas now, right? Which means there is electricity available in villages, rural areas, and of course, Akshay, given his on-ground insight, would be probably able to concur. But there are various limitations in the entire rural electrification process, right? Because if they've just barely got electricity, electric charging is out of the window immediately. But can we do something about it? Yes, we can. All of us know that government has differential pricing of urban area electricity charges versus rural area electricity charges, right? On one hand, you could perhaps say that someone in the rural areas could be incentivized by saying that, look, you can use the agricultural electrification lines to create the charging infrastructure. And if there is some way in which Niti Aayog, folks from Invest India, folks from the VC, or can all get together and brainstorm this, that could be one possible solution. PPP is another model which we could work on, in order to incentivize startups to set up these infrastructure over there. Now, what happens after you set up the infrastructure? What is the utilization level? So utilization level will then depend on the digital literacy of the the population there. So there is actually, if you see, an entire pyramid of and sequence of things that needs to be addressed before we say let's focus on rural electrification or the rural charging infrastructure development right now. A has to be done, and then B and C and D, and these are all things that I can think of.
That's absolutely true, Ankit. Hello?
There's a lot of network bandwidth issue, I believe. So that created a little mess here. However, we were able to understand that if everybody comes together, we'll be able to, get transition that we are looking at. So when it comes to the policies, the venture capitalists, and the the initiatives that are taken by the government, I would like to speak to Shikhar. Shikhar, this question goes to you.
So, sorry, can you elaborate a bit on your question, please?
Yes, please, for sure. So I'm really sorry for the network problem that we are facing here. So Shikhar, what I want to understand is that, what are the opportunities that lie for the startup entrepreneurs if they really want to deep dive into this particular sector, wherein they want to get themselves invested in starting up a business in electric vehicle domain. What kind of benefits can be provided by Invest India, and how that hand-holding can be given?
35 kilometers away from the main area, and in those 35 kilometers after 8 p.m. you won't see a single soul. So these are certain problems that are unique to India, because India is big, and like the area where geographically wise we are big. So when we are talking about certain challenges that are very specific to India, we also talk about certain opportunities that are very specific to India. So, for example, I was talking to, I have interacted with more than 70-80 EV startups in the last 1.5 years. And there are certain startups that are clearly focusing on developing infrastructure or vehicles or charging infrastructure specifically for the rural areas. They are focusing on tier 2, tier 3, because there is a lot of competition in tier 1 now, and they are focusing on area where nobody is focusing, like tier 3 cities, the rural areas. They are building on vehicles that are more sturdy. So if you understand the rural infrastructure, the rural roads in India, they are not as smooth as the city. You need a very sturdy vehicle. So what might work in your city might not work in the rural area. So this itself presents a new opportunity for the startups to build a vehicle that is low on cost, that is more sturdy, that can go in the rural area. Because the audience in that area does not care a lot about whether you have a Bluetooth in your scooter, whether you have a charging point in your scooter. What they need is a vehicle which has a kind of which can go on the roads in that particular area, and that has a longer, as I mentioned, 35 kilometers just itself to go from the main area to the house. So that has a more capacity. So these are the challenges that are unique to India, and they also present certain opportunities that are unique to India. Another thing is that the e-commerce companies, they are not limited to cities. They are not limited to Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata. They have gone into these rural areas. When these e-commerce companies have gone into these rural areas and they are pledging to go green by 2024, 2025, and like they are saying that we will all become electric. So they are not becoming electric only in the urban areas. So we have startups like Zip Electric that are operating in the cities, but they are also becoming green in the rural areas. Lot of delivery startups, these urban green electricity startups, they are focusing on currently on solving the urban area, but that presents a kind of a unserviced kind of an opportunity in the rural segment. What if like we create a segment, such kind of a Zip Electric in the rural areas? So deliveries, then we have like a certain policies. There was I wrote that how the PLI policies for the advanced chemistry cell policies are creating opportunities for the startup. When we have the production in India, the cell cost will be low, the battery will be low. Ultimately, it will reduce the cost for the startups and make the startups more sustainable. So in the entire ecosystem, right from the battery manufacturing to the deliveries, opportunities are there for all kinds of startups, be in rural, be in urban areas.
Right, that gives a lot of insights in regards with what kind of startups can join in and can get into this particular domain. I hope the entrepreneurs are listening to this. And with that regards, I really have to ask a question from Vishnu. Vishnu, because you are running a fund, I really want to understand what's your criteria of analyzing a startup, and what do you think is there an opportunity that lies for the startups and for the investors as well?
Sure. Thanks, HEENA, for that question. So we are an early stage fund. We typically put check sizes which vary from $100K to $1 million. I don't want, these days, we don't know where the typical check sizes for a seed or Series A goes in India. But this would probably keep us in that pre-seed to pre-Series A rounds. As we are very focused on clean mobility, which essentially means it could be in electric vehicles, it could be aerial mobility, which includes aviation companies or drone technologies. We also look into water-based transportation. I have had like few startups coming from that space, which is into electric, clean, water-based transportation, space tech to some extent. When it comes to looking into a startup, primarily like at an early stage, we are not very different from any other venture capital fund. Like the most important thing is the team. The team needs to be knowledgeable, team needs to be humble, open to adapt and change according to the market needs. So that's definitely something on the top priority for us. Apart from that, like we are also a very thesis-driven investor. So even within EVs or clean mobility, we have very subsector level deep theses which we follow. And so we are always in the hunt to find that entrepreneurs who kind of like align with our thesis. These subsectors vary from like, OEMs in EV space to charging infras, battery swapping providers, or say people who are in the alternative chemistry or battery technologies, to even the downstream value chain service activities. Right now, a lot of my focus is on the downstream activities. There's a lot of opportunity coming up over there with respect to financing. How, you know, there is no like NBFCs don't have like very good products for EV financing. You can't blame them because their risk appetite is much lower, and we haven't even seen a full life cycle of product, EV product. So you know, how they are very worried about the fact that there is no secondary market, the second-hand market is not there for EVs. So how do you manage the residual value risk associated over there? So that's an interesting area of you know, which I'm looking into. The other would be, you know, people who can come up with technologies on asset monetization, asset security, etc., battery analytics.
Like you mentioned about making the battery swapping as a power grid model.
Those are also some areas, like, you know, from a technology deep tech angle, you know, this incredible load that is going to go into Indian grid, which is anyway outdated. So even technologies which can help in modernizing the grid is also something very important. And just to add to the last point, like, you know, the secondary market creation, there's a lot of opportunities. You know, EV has essentially two different secondary market option compared to that of, say, a traditional automotive player. The battery life cycle battery lifetime is roughly half of that of the overall asset. So you probably, like, you know, as a general thumb of rule, you might have to change the battery twice during the life cycle of the battery if you're owning the battery. But then the battery, when you change it, that battery is not like thrown into trash. It is just not useful. It just does not have the right efficiency for using in a mobility application. That batteries can still be repurposed into stationary applications as well. And that secondary market is already there. So how do you make the linkages? That's an interesting area someone can work on. And then the whole larger question on like, how do you do the larger battery or the vehicle secondary market? And one just last point on once you are done with the battery, there is a battery recycling opportunity as well. You can recycle around 70% of the, you know, rare earth materials and stuff in a lithium-ion battery and use it again. These are wonderful opportunities where I'm looking for, you know, smart entrepreneurs to come and do things.
So
that was a great insight, Vishnu.
That was actually very interesting. No worries. So
sorry for interrupting in that sense, because there's a lot of network lag in between. I do apologize for all the attendees there, because I believe there are a lot of questions that you need us to answer. And I would ask RITIN to ask such questions as a Q&A from everybody here. We are trying our level best to stay in the timeline. Over to you, RITIN.
So I'll be honest, we have got a question from Mr. Nilesh from Autocar. So he has put up a very interesting point, because we were talking a lot about battery swapping and everything. So he asked that when you talk about battery swapping, so wouldn't it be that the EV manufacturers and battery makers be able to agree on standardization of these batteries? Will it not create more challenges in terms of safety, operational costs, and what would happen to whatever these individual companies have put in there into R&D capabilities from OEM point of views and the USPs they are creating? Because everyone wants to be different. So how would that piece together the big jigsaw puzzle of battery interoperability would be solved in a manner of speaking?
I can take that, RITIN. Given that next week, you know, we are going to be announcing one of our investments in the entire battery swapping ecosystem. See, it's very similar to how, you know, we have a bunch of electronic devices with, you know, take mobile, for example. The micro USB charger has now graduated to a Type-C, which is now accepted by an iPhone or an Android. And over the years, this will evolve. But right now, to say that here is a standard battery and this is what you should make and everyone should stick to this, will sort of put limitations on OEMs, because they've been used to manufacturing a certain category of battery, whether it's lithium ion or lead acid or any category of battery. This will largely, if not demotivate, but at least it will tactically sort of limit their scaling plans or adaptation in the market. So I mean, it's at the end of the day, standardization will have to be a norm. But at least let's get there. Let the markets evolve a little bit, and then talk about standardization.
Yeah.
PRABHJOT, please, over to you.
Yes, Ritin, thanks for passing this. And yes, as Mr. Ankit said, was talking, I was saying that, yeah, as being the convener and the chairman of the Committee on Standardization for the National Good on all different LEV structure. So I've been working on the standardization and all these issues for a long time. But I see the concern that Mr. Ankit has raised, and so there are a number of ways in which this has to be addressed. So both technologically through standardization and through the implementation, how to resolve it. So when we were writing standards or while we were making the specification, and we knew that India as such, we do not have different technologies matured on the chemistries, nothing getting commercialized. We do not have very common structures or standardization of the vehicles as such. So there's no standardization on the vehicle side where it mandates that this is going to be the pit size for the battery. So when it comes to the standardization on the battery, how do we marry it together, right? So that is the first concern that is there. Now, how do you take care of the future evolutions as well? So the very first thing that we decided is that do not mandate anything on the chemistry side of it, that it has to be chemistry A, B, C, any variant of lithium ion, sodium ion, aluminium, metal, or whatever. It has to be chemistry agnostic. What we need to specify is on the performance matrices. So specify the efficiency, performance metrics, and say that minimum standard that you have to fulfill is this. There is no end to the maximized performance. So your battery might give you, let's say, some whatever XYZ, whatever per kilometer or per kg or volumetrically that you want to define, but it has to minimum be at that level, and maximum you can go to whatever way. So evolution to that matter is protected. Second thing that you have to standardize is on the voltage and the powertrain characteristics. Right. So from, it could be few volts to 100 volts and few hundred volts it can go to. But when we talk about LEVs, and especially when you're talking about two-wheeler and three-wheeler, there are already standards that specify that manually how much you can handle, protecting the safety in view, which is actually 60 volts. So you have to be playing below 60 volts on that. So would actually 60 volt battery fit into that? No, because while charging it will go up to that profile. So there are ways in which the technology evolution plus in which the creativity of every manufacturer is protected. However, to bring in the standardization into this, the minimum features that are required. For example, what is needed? One, the dimension. Second, on the connector side of it, that it has to be mandated. Use this connector from safety, from handling, for number of cycles in which it has to be used. And third, on the communication side of it, because if I'm using my swap station, somebody ABC is using their swap stations, for the ease of the user, it is basically the standards are nothing but how to bring in affordability, how to bring in safety, and how to bring in ease of access for the users. That's something that we have to keep in mind. And from that point of view, while we say that they have to be interacting with multiple operators or multiple vehicles and multiple batteries, you need to fetch all that data, because you want security, you want to give them the promised mileage, which is not possible unless you know what is the state of health of the battery, what is the safety and all that. So from that point of view, communication is where that is kind of a minimum mandated thing. So there are minimum standards formulated, and maximum it is all open for whatever creativity you want to put in, whatever handles and all those you want to put in, and whatever beautification you want to do. So from all that point of view, it is really left open. So that's on the drafts that I can talk about.
I really hope that Nilesh got the answers, and it's very insightful because you both have actually put across the challenges as well as the solutions that are happening. So it's really interesting to listen to both sides of this coin. And commonly it happens that we only get to listen the good ones or the bad ones, but it's great to have the solutions and the problems at hand. But so we've got another question that is a larger question from us also, from this panel, from the attendees also. So there is the biggest talk about the fact that CO2 emissions are gonna be reduced because of EV, and that's how governments, the corporates, everyone is pushing it out there, that it's gonna benefit the environment. So don't mind my words. I know the people might kill me for asking this, but is it gonna actually happen, or is it just a big corporate conspiracy or a government fiasco? Partha sir and Akshay sir, I guess you being on the operating sides of the corporates, I'm putting you in difficult situations and answering that.
Ritin, I would love to take this question, but before I answer the question, I would like to add one word into your entire sentence, what you probably forgot. The CO2 emission will just not reduce, it will reduce relatively. Let's understand that. If somebody thinks that CO2 emission will reduce tomorrow almost below the expectation line and everything will become hunky-dory from tomorrow, that kind of a fairy tale story is not being told. Yes, of course, it will reduce relatively, and one can logically place that. How? Relatively, I was seeing that question. So manufacturing is going to be similarly done. Therefore, the consumption of energy is going to be there and emitting CO2 or all kinds of pollutants. On the other hand, when you're charging the battery, how are you charging? You're charging by using electricity. How is electricity being produced? It's again, so well to wheel, the relative reduction of CO2 or relative reduction of pollution is what we are talking about. And that is important because please understand, in the history of universe, any change is not really the change that you see at the drop of a hat. It happens over a period of time. It takes time. So the kind of scenario where we are today living in, the kind of pollution that we are battling, it requires some kind of reduction, some kind of action on that. Therefore, of course, it will reduce, and one can see that significant reduction once you have a reasonable number of vehicles, electric vehicles on road. The share of road has to increase. Please understand, it can't be done by force. It has to be proactively adopted by the consumers. And for that, you have to match the experience or excel the experience or offer something which otherwise he is not able to get from ICE. If the innovation works in that line, people will adopt. And relative reduction will happen logically, anybody can place. Will it address all the problems? No.
Making it more beneficial to the customer to have an EV rather than to just play around with the ICE versus EV.
Please understand, everybody sitting here or any human being within his age group of between 18 and 60, I'm saying in the working life, is a consumer and a producer at the same time. We are producing something, our services or something we are selling, and we are consuming. So when we consume, we all behave in the similar manner. We will not accept something by trading off a very fundamental requirement that we have. You will not accept an EV just because you have to do some service to the environment. Therefore, it has to meet those criteria, and there the innovation must work. Yeah.
True that. Akshay sir, over to you. Don't kill me for asking you this.
No. This is a good question, and I might have some good news for you on this. So, if we are talking about CO2 alone, currently what is happening is in most of the vehicles, at least on four-wheelers, ever since BS4 norms have come in, BS4 and even in higher commercial vehicles, BS6 has kicked in. The after-treatment system has become very important. So there is a engine-out catalytic converter on the vehicles. There is an SCR system. There is a urea dosing system, which to put together is like a treatment plant, which often costs more than the engine itself today. Now, when we shift to an electric vehicle, we get rid of all of this, right? And all of these systems, they use very expensive rare earth metals. Now, what we are doing is that we are shifting from fossil fuels to electricity. Now, electricity is being produced through renewable as well as non-renewable sources. Wherever it is renewable resources, there is no concern for pollution. It's perfectly fine. Wherever there is non-renewable energy being produced, at those locations, it is much easier to control or to filter pollution than on every vehicle, putting a treatment plant on every vehicle. It might be much easier to manage pollution at that level. That being said, at CO2 level, I am more hopeful that it should bring good results. That being said, there will be other concerns which will come into play, which some of my fellow panelists have also mentioned. Definitely, mining pollution is going to increase, and also the pollution after the battery has gone through its second life, third life, and you are getting into recycling. Though you might be able to, claim 70% of the metals, but still 30% would end up as a pollutant. So there would be new technologies which would be required for managing those pollutants. So that is my take on this.
So I'll now open this question to everyone else, because this is this should have been the highlight or the topic of this whole webinar. When this question came across me, I felt that.
RITIN, if I can add something. So there was a study. There was a study by Carbon Brief. What they did was they compared a Nissan Leaf with a conventional vehicle. So they tried to understand the CO2 emissions by each of the vehicles. So electric vehicle, as per their study, electric vehicle kind of emitted more CO2 in the manufacturing process, because the battery is using the electricity, the overall vehicle manufacturing. So it is consuming almost 80% of the CO2 in the entire lifetime that is being emitted by EV, right? So for the first 3 years, the CO2 emitted by the EV was much higher than the CO2 emitted by the normal ICE vehicle, right? But after 3 years, the incremental was negligible. So initially it was 10 tons of CO2. By the end of 10th year, it was only 12 tons of CO2. But whereas for ICE vehicle, it reached to 36 tons of CO2 in 10 years. This was so for the, so if you see, you don't see, like a lot of people say that, so there is electricity going on in the battery manufacturing, there is electricity, but if we have to see the entirety, what is the life in the entire lifetime of the vehicle.
So like Partha sir mentioned in the middle of the webinar somewhere, that you have to look the EV vehicle from the life cycle of the whole product, rather than seeing it in a short-term perspective. It actually holds true from not about it being expensive or cheap, but also on the point of views of CO2 emissions and everything. PRABHJOT ma'am, what's your take? Because you have a different perspective.
RITIN, and please don't embarrass me again and again calling me ma'am. Okay, so if I have to take that, I mean, Shikhar told a very interesting answer, and there are a number of reports that actually prove the same, that well-to-wheel and the entire life of the vehicle, the CO2 emissions are much lesser as compared to ICE. In totality, I'll also like to say that if we have to say that emission on roads in the entire life versus when we say emissions that we have on CO2 for EVs and manufacturing, the two parts of it. One, what would you be able to handle better? Emissions on road, which vehicles are doing, or while in manufacture where emissions are, can be controlled or can be managed, or there could be some cleaning processes that could be adopted. So if it is centralized approach, managing it is better. And onto the manufacturing side, there are cleaner and cleaner processes that are coming up. So I believe that that part is one where it could be more technology oriented, more cleaner processes that could be introduced instead of trying to control vehicles. That emission on the road that we know from ICE vehicles is more as compared to, any day it's more as compared to EVs. That's one. Second, if we talk about India, any time we also know that we do not have our own fuel. So now is the chance that we produce our own fuel, though we are producing it to make emissions. But yes, we cannot produce diesel and petrol. We can only produce batteries. And if we are fortunate enough, soon we should be seeing some good breakthroughs on the cell chemistries as well from the elements that are available in India, not really dependent upon imports. Like sodium, like silica, like glass, or any other metals that we have in abundance in the country. So if we see that, I think that anyways, the chances of controlling our emissions would be much, much higher.
So from
those are my 2 cents.
From a battery expert to now to a powertrain expert. Mani sir, need your 2 cents on this.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So, see me, yeah. So definitely. So, what is very important? Accordingly, I want to give some simple, formulas. We talked so much about standardization, so much about battery swapping, so much about the future technology, and so much about what is really important for us. So what, in addition, what I would like to kind of bring into all the whole team is that we as a country look at what something which works for us. For example, if we are not thinking in that direction, we are bringing in some technology from outside and trying to use it here. For example, you take a lithium-ion battery. Now the battery management system, PRABHJOT knows very well. The battery has to operate from -40 to +80 degrees. That is what the whole universe says, and we also accept that. And we heavily invest on so much of money, effort, cost into it. But ideally speaking, your battery do not have to work in -40 degree in India.
Okay.
Right. So there are certain things which we can minimize. Localize,
okay.
We can minimize the cost of the battery also by doing so, right? So the whole country, I would kind of demand or advise or appeal to the whole August team here that why not we look at something which would be just enough, the value for money, systems and components and that, the solutions for India, right? So that could be the law. Of course, we know the subject very well, and we know this is going to take up now, and we are going to the next step. And this is a time for us to think something unique, something uniquely work for our country with the value for money and cost-effective way.
Right? So, Mani sir, you just mentioned the reason. You just mentioned the reason why we created this event. Actually, we wanted to make that happen. Yeah. We tried to bring in the best of the industries to work together. We have got people who can put in money, people from government, the technology people. Who else better? Yeah. So, Ankit, what's your take on this? Ankit might have some issues. Vishnu, what's your take on the big conspiracy of the corporates?
What is the big conspiracy here, Ritin?
About the CO2 emissions. Is it gonna reduce? It's not gonna reduce?
I mean, I know you have said don't attack you, but I take fairly big offense in saying that this is a conspiracy. CO2 emissions are man-made, and that has been proven over and over and over again. I don't think our debate should center around that. What I would though say is that whether will moving to electric mobility help in the long-term emissions reduction, that is something which we can definitely discuss. I agree a lot to what Dr. PRABHJOT said. Climate change is a wicked problem, which means there's so many moving parts, you can't solve it at one at a time. You can't just pick and do it in a linear manner. And even when you come down to a subsector of climate change, process of climate change, like mobility, it's still wicked. It's still like difficult and complex. So many moving parts. So one of the ways I look at, which Dr. PRABHJOT alluded to, was like centralizing the emission points, right? Like, can you do that? The more distributed where the emissions are happening, it's difficult for you to control. And whether anybody is going to, like, if somebody is going to come and tell me that, you can't put in an EV vehicle unless you prove that total emissions is reduced today, I'm not going to buy into that. I'm not going to even agree to that because EVs are, unambiguously the right step in controlling the emissions. We might not be able to do that right now, but by centralizing processes in an EV mobility value chain, you can easily have more levers to reduce the emitting factors. That would include at the manufacturing places or where the mining happens, where the raw materials or the supply chain has. You can't, by taking it off from the retail customers and the emission factor, you are getting a lot of leverage for centralized control. And that is, I think, the biggest qualitative argument in favor of why EVs should be, whether they, pollute or emit more now versus later. It's a stepping stone in the right direction. And so I don't.
Listening to you, Vishnu, that gives an insights on the fact that slow and steady approach is something that we should eye on. And that's exactly how the transition would be smoothened. I know there are a lot of questions that are being asked from the attendees. I promise you that you will get your answers over the mail, or we'll speak with you in order to give you all the answers that you are looking from our panelists. Because we are running short of time, I would like to take an off from here. And before doing that, I really want to thank all my friends and colleagues from the media who participated in this, and to all the attendees for your patience for 1.5 hours. I know that we have stretched it a lot, but we tried our level best to, provide you all the perspectives that we talked about. If I don't thank my panelists, that would not be justifiable. So lastly, I would like to express my, heartfelt gratitude to all the panelists who took their time, who were, supportive enough of this particular initiative that we wanted to bring in. We will be coming back, with all and more sectors discussions with our esteemed panelists in order to give you more insights. And we will take care of all the perspectives from different domains now. The future holds what we might not even perceive, and having that eye, that helps our hedge, our bets right. Does a service to all of us far beyond all possible thankfulness. So I am extremely thankful to all our panelists. Thank you so much for that. With that, we hope that everybody, be the panelists, be the attendees, or our friends and colleagues from press, were able to take away from at least a little information on electric vehicle and the EV. Our topic was EV beyond 2022, and that's exactly what we tried answering in this particular event. I hope we were able to justify. And from that, thank you for all being here with us. With that, this is Fundwise signing out.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.